Shabbat Shalom. This week we read the Torah portion Vayigash. We are nearing the completion and the end of the book of Genesis, and we are focused upon Joseph down in Egypt, and in this portion, his reconciliation with his brothers, and ultimately the reunion with his father. But though this portion focuses on Joseph and that, I'd like to focus on Jacob, his father, for a moment. For a moment, let's review Jacob's life. He was born to his father Isaac and mother Rebekah. He was a twin. His older brother was Esau. His father favored Esau. He was helped by his mother to deceive his father to get the blessing of the firstborn. He had to run away from home, sent by his mom to live with her brother, Jacob's uncle Laban, to avoid being killed by his brother. On the journey to his uncle's, he rests for the night. He has this famous dream, angels going up and down on a ladder, where God assures Jacob, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go. Jacob ultimately reaches his uncle's land. He meets and falls in love with Rachel, his daughter. He agrees to work 7 years for Laban in order to marry Rachel. Laban then deceives Jacob after 7 years and substitutes her older sister Leah for his wife. Laban then forces Jacob to work an additional 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. As Jacob increases the flocks and herds of Laban, Laban tricks Jacob out of his rightful share. Jacob ultimately has a dream in which God appears to him, telling him it's time to leave Laban and return to his home. As he returns home, he contemplates meeting for the first time in these 20 some odd years his brother Esau and what's going to happen. The night before the meeting with his brother takes place, Jacob wrestles with a being, an angel, and is permanently disabled with a limp, and his name is changed to Yisrael, to Israel. We also learn in Jacob's history how his daughter Dinah was raped, how Jacob's beloved wife Rachel, on their journey back to Jacob's land, dies in childbirth of her second son, Benjamin. We also understand in Jacob's life, he learns that his favorite son, Joseph, was killed dead, though he was actually thrown in a pit and sold off to a caravan going to Egypt by his brothers. And finally, 20 years after hearing of the death of his son, Joseph, Jacob is now told he's alive and well, and he's now journeying down to Egypt to meet him. So as we look back on Jacob's life, how would we characterize it? Blessed? Difficult? Challenging? Perhaps real? What impact has God had on his life? Has God really been there for him as God promised him? Has God truly blessed him as God promised to do so? We all might have different answers for that. Some of us might say, yeah, Jacob was pretty blessed. Some of us might say, wow, look at all the difficulties and challenges. No, God let him down. But perhaps what we should do in answering this question is look at what Jacob thought. And we don't get a real answer, but perhaps there's some insight in this week's Torah portion. As Jacob is journeying down to Egypt, he stops deliberately upon his journey to offer sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac, giving sacrifices to God in thanksgiving. It perhaps begs the question, are we only happy with God and our Judaism when everything goes our way? Clearly, I think Jacob thought he was blessed. Friends, like most in contemporary America, if we were to pick a motto, it might well be, what have you done for me lately? Jacob, on the other hand, sees beyond himself. He doesn't ask what's in it for me. His guiding question is, what do I owe God? What does God expect of me? We all pursue individual happiness as we understand it. And when the agenda of some outside organization intersects our own, we are willing to belong. But our belonging is usually pretty fragile. We belong on our own terms for our own interests. If we're unhappy with the rabbi's sermon, we quit the synagogue. If we don't have time to attend its meetings, we quit the synagogue. If there's a pandemic and we can't be in person in the sanctuary, we quit the synagogue. In these instances, we rarely pause to ask whether or not the group, the synagogue, does worthy work that requires our support. If we aren't getting gratification at that moment, we take our marbles and we go home. Look, for example, at how many Americans don't vote because the candidates, they're all a bunch of crooks. Now, I give you, this year, we saw record turnouts for the vote for the election, yet still, it was 60% of the population. What used to be a sacred privilege now seems to be simply an option or a chore. Sometimes it's easier just to stay home. The big exception to this proclivity to quit is those affiliations that are not voluntary. We pay our taxes, whether we want to or not. Even some Jewish customs take on a near obligatory stature, praying together on the high holy days, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, providing a bar bat mitzvah for our children. These necessities, we put up with the rules and guidelines, even though they may not necessarily be tailored to our personal tastes. Otherwise, it's make me happy or say goodbye. Like Jacob, Judaism cannot survive unless Jews are willing to make sacrifices on its behalf. God can't make a difference in this world unless we are willing to maintain our posts regardless of personal gain. Needy Jews and non-Jews too won't be helped unless we provide the resources and energy necessary to assure the presence and health of Jewish institutions and charities, i.e. the synagogue. Once upon a time, Jews understood that communal institutions deserve their support and affiliation, not for what each individual got out of them at the moment, but because those institutions allowed us to take care of each other and to serve God. In traditional synagogues, there's committees that are called Bikur Cholim committees that visit the sick and assure that no ill Jews are neglected or abandoned. In traditional synagogue communities, there's Chevra Kadisha committees, assuring the proper and loving care for the remains of deceased Jews. There's Menachem Avelim committees, providing Shiva minyanim, Shiva services that comfort mourners while assuring that they eat and maintain their health despite their sorrow. And of course, there's daily services, assuring that a sizable company of Jews are always on hand to pray, to study, and to provide community to all who need it. Today, friends, it is the synagogue and our Jewish institutions that fulfill these sacred duties. Once upon a time, Jews gave to charities, both Jewish and non-Jewish, at a far higher rate than their Gentile neighbors. Members of those organizations didn't give of their time and their money because it felt good. They did so because that was what a mensch does. They, like Jacob, were prepared to make a sacrifice for the greater good of their fellow Jews, their fellow human beings, and their covenant with God. It saddens me to think those days are ending. If I don't enjoy it, I quit. If I don't need it, I stop supporting it. We're very good at part of Rabbi Hillel's wisdom recorded in the Mishnah. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? We're less attentive to his next line. If I am only for myself, what am I? The problem with only staying involved when it serves our own interests is that we can no longer count on each other during our own moments of need. If we don't support synagogues, federations, and charities for the sake of others, why should others stay involved for us? In a world in which everybody looks out for number one, we will never add up to much. 1 + 1 + 1 equals 1, the loneliest number of all. Perhaps making a sacrifice, as did our ancestor Jacob, is a good investment after all. Shabbat Shalom.